You were there the whole time. You laughed at the right moments. You refilled someone's drink. You answered when someone asked how you were doing. Fine, good, busy lately? And they nodded and moved on, and you moved on too. And the evening went exactly the way evenings are supposed to go. And somewhere in the middle of it, you had a thought you did not share with anyone. Not because it was too dark or too strange, just because there was no opening for it. No one who would have known what to do with it. So you held it, and you smiled, and you stayed until it was reasonable to leave. That is not loneliness the way people talk about loneliness. Loneliness people talk about is empty apartments and Friday nights with nowhere to go. That kind has a solution. Get out more, call someone, join something. The kind you just recognized does not have that solution because the room was full. You were already out. You were already there. And it did not help. The loneliest people in the Bible were not the ones left outside. They were the ones at the center of the story. Kings, prophets, the Son of God, surrounded by people who did not, could not, reach the part of them that needed reaching. Loneliness, it turns out, has almost nothing to do with how many people are in the room. Start with a cave. David is hiding in a place called Adullam, somewhere in the hills of Judah, running from a king who wants him dead. He has done nothing wrong. He was faithful. He was chosen. And now the man who was supposed to be his father-in-law is hunting him through the wilderness with an army. In that cave, David writes Psalm 142. It is not a long psalm, but one line stops everything. No one cares for my soul. Not, no one is here. Not, I am alone. No one cares for my soul. The inside of him, the part that is not his reputation or his military record or his talent with a sling, that part, no one is reaching it. Here is what makes this strange. After David hides in Adullam, people start showing up. 400 of them, eventually. Men in debt, men in distress, men running from their own problems. They come to him. He is not physically alone for long. And he still wrote that line, 400 people in a cave. And David writes, no one cares for my soul. Because the people there needed something from him. They were not there to know him. They were there because he was the most capable person available. And capability is not company. Being needed is not the same as being known. You may have built something like that. A life where people rely on you, come to you, call you when things go wrong. And you are glad to be that person. And there is still something in you that has not been touched in a long time. David eventually leaves the cave, but he carries the psalm with him. The feeling did not end when the circumstances changed. We have now moved to a desert, a different kind of alone. Hagar did not choose to be there. She was a servant in Abraham's household, which means she had no choices about most of what happened to her. When Sarah could not have children, Hagar was given to Abraham. When Hagar became pregnant, the dynamic between the two women curdled into something ugly. And eventually, after years of tension and a son named Ishmael, and a second child born to Sarah, Hagar was sent away. Into the desert, with her son. With a container of water that ran out, she walked until the water was gone. And then she put her son down under a bush, a few feet away, not right beside him, and she sat down facing away from him. The text says, she thought, I cannot watch the boy die. Genesis 21:16. She did not walk away. She stayed close enough to hear him. She just could not look. That is a very specific kind of alone. The kind where you are present but turned away, where staying is the only thing you can do, and it does not feel like enough. And in that moment, not after, not when things improve, in that moment, something happens. A voice, water appears, and Hagar does something no one else in the Bible does at this point in the story. She gives God a name, El Roi, Genesis 16:13. The God who sees me, not the God who rescued me, not the God who is powerful, the God who sees me. Because in a desert with a dying child and no one coming and no plan forward, the thing she needed most was not a solution. It was to be seen. To have someone know she was there, that this was happening, that it mattered. She named God after what she needed him to be. That name appears once in the entire Bible. Hagar is the only one who uses it, and she arrives at it from the bottom of complete isolation. Not a prophet, not a patriarch, not someone with a calling or a covenant. A woman in a desert who ran out of water. Now further, to a man who was never not alone. Jeremiah was called to be a prophet before he was born, and almost immediately, God gives him an instruction unlike anything given to anyone else in the book. Do not marry. Do not have children. Jeremiah 16:2. The reason is not punishment. It is protection for the children who would otherwise be born into what is coming. But the result for Jeremiah is this: he lives his entire life without anyone who belongs to him completely. He preaches for 40 years. Not one person in the historical record changes course because of what he says. The city he loves is destroyed exactly as he warned it would be, and he is there to watch it happen. Movie Loken. He writes Lamentations after that. The most sustained expression of grief in the Bible, written by a man with no one to grieve with. And inside that book, something strange appears. In the same chapter where he writes that God has walled him in, shut out his prayer, made his chains heavy, he also writes, "The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning." Same chapter, same man, same breath. He does not resolve the loneliness. He carries it alongside something that does not move, that is not comfort. It is a different thing, harder and more honest than comfort. Now the last one. And this one is the hardest to sit with. The night before the crucifixion, Jesus takes 3 people into the Garden of Gethsemane. Not all 12 disciples, 3. Peter, James, and John, the ones who had been with him at the Transfiguration, the ones closest to him. He goes a little further into the garden, and then he turns back to them and says, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." Matthew 26:38. He is not asking them to pray for him. He is asking them to be awake, to be present, to stay while he goes through something. He comes back and they are asleep. He wakes them, goes back, prays again, comes back, asleep again. Third time, he does not wake them. He just says, "Are you still sleeping? It is enough. The hour has come." The person who had fed thousands, who had healed people who could not reach him through the crowd, who had spent 3 years pouring himself out for everyone around him. On the last night, he asked for one thing: "Stay awake with me." And the people he was closest to could not do it. Matthew records that while he was praying, his sweat was like drops of blood. Luke 22:44. He was not performing distress, he was in it, and he was in it alone. A few feet from three people who loved him and had fallen asleep. Here is what these four have in common. David had 400 people. Hagar had her son. Jeremiah had a nation. Jesus had his disciples. None of them were alone in the physical sense. All of them were unreachable in the way that mattered. The loneliness in the Bible is almost never about absence. It is about the space between what you are carrying and what the people around you can hold. That space can exist in a cave, in a desert, in a 40-year ministry, in a garden with 3 friends 10 feet away. Hagar named God after what she needed most. Not rescue, not strength, sight. El Roy, the one who sees. There is a version of this story where that name is just a historical detail, a footnote about how ancient people named their gods. But it was not written by a scholar. It was written by a woman in a desert who had run out of everything and needed one thing to be true. She needed to not be invisible. Maybe that is the question underneath all of this. Not how to be less alone, not how to find the right people, or say the right things, or build the kind of life where loneliness stops showing up. Maybe the question is simpler and harder than that. Who actually sees you? Not the version you brought to that dinner. Not the one who laughs at the right moments and says, "Fine. Good. Busy lately?" The one who had a thought in the middle of the room and did not share it with anyone. Does anyone know that one is there?